Seth Kaplan is with Airline Weekly, and he joins us now from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Seth, you believe that this federal probe that took down Jeff Smisek was kind of the final straw because he was kind of due to be replaced anyway. Tell us about the problems dogging United and whether it's because of the leader or because of structural issues within the industry.
Yeah, you might ask, is it the jockey or is it the horse, Scarlett? In other words, is it all Jeff Smisek's fault that United is a financial and operational laggard? Or is there something structural about United that just makes it a harder airline to run? And it's a fair question because, I mean, you could go back to the 80s or 90s, and this is an airline that generally lagged, let's say, American and Delta. Basically, the least successful financially airline of those that survived. Obviously, there were others that were far worse. And there are some things about United. Look, it has higher labor costs than Delta and American. That's just the reality of the fact that those other two airlines went through bankruptcy more recently, got to sort of reset the clock more recently. Not a lot a current CEO can do about that. United's hubs, although they're in big metro areas, that's good. United doesn't have hubs where it kind of dominates the city in the way, American does in Charlotte, let's say, Delta in Atlanta and Minneapolis. Not a lot you could change about the real estate. But on the other hand, United has made mistakes in recent years. We're talking here about these flights, these phantom flights to Columbia to please Newark. More publicly, Smisek a couple years ago threatened to reduce flying at Houston, which was a highly profitable hub, because he was upset about Southwest getting some new international flying rights there. And he followed through on that threat, reducing flights at a highly profitable hub, and then they restored them just in time for the oil bust when it became tougher to make money in Houston. So a little bit of both, the horse and the jockey.
Seth, some of the people we talked to yesterday about the ouster of Jeff Smisek say that what we believe took place, this sort of quid pro quo with David Sampson, the former chairman of the New York Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, was an outlier situation. In your experience covering the airline industry, have you seen more of those kinds of backroom deals between airlines and the people who have sort of authority over the hubs out of which they fly?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question because, I mentioned a minute ago, I mean, in much bigger ways, airlines do this, very publicly and very legally. I mentioned what United itself did at Houston a couple years ago, even if it was to its own detriment. American, just over the past year, threatened that if Charlotte wouldn't keep the exemption on some fuel taxes American avoids paying.
No, I mean, that's why I mentioned backroom, because that stuff is all, at least in the public domain, this sort of and there should be, a disagreement. Each side is incentivized, to ask for different things. And so there's a disagreement, and so finally they have to resolve it, and either they come to some sort of consensus or they don't. What we know, or at least we think we know, about what went on between United and Smisek and perhaps a couple of other executives and David Sampson was completely, the flight was public, but the reason for its existence was secret.
Oh, absolutely, and completely inappropriate if the allegations are correct. And is this the only time in history that this has happened? No. Is that commonplace in this part of the world? Something like launching a market for a reason like that? No, that's not common either. Is somebody out there getting an upgrade they shouldn't be getting, or something along those lines every day? Yeah, probably so. But this definitely pushes the bounds. The idea of launching a flight that shouldn't have otherwise existed, not something that happens every day, at least in this part of the world.
Well, Seth, you're a known entity inside the airline industry. You've taught numerous airline executives economics courses to help them figure out profitability in the industry. Tell us what the feeling is probably like inside Delta, inside American. Are they rubbing their hands together thinking this spells opportunity, especially at a time when airlines are now competing on price?
Well, it does, and in fact, they've already been taking advantage of this. Continental, prior to its merger with United, as sitting in Manhattan, spent really a couple decades kind of retraining people. Hey, come over to Newark. Continental was running a very good operation, and they were very successful. And now Delta, over the past couple years in particular, has been going back to those same corporations, to the big banks, and saying, do you want to get there on time? Do you want to not lose your bag? Come across the Triborough Bridge to LaGuardia instead. American, sort sort of still integrating itself with U.S. Airways, already farther down the road in some respects with that merger, turning its operation around. And in that same position, in a place like Chicago, for example, where American and United go head-to-head at O'Hare, again, American, you would think, if anything, they would be struggling more because it's earlier days in their merger, but they've so far anyway, and the story's not over, done a better job. So certainly they sensed that opportunity. The change of the CEO per se, I don't know that there are that many customers out there today saying because there's a new CEO per se, they're going to fly United or not. But yeah, I mean, they want to get there on time and with their bags. And United, over the past few years anyway, has been the airline that statistically has been less likely to do that.
All right, we'll see if anything changes with Oscar Munoz at the helm. All right, Seth Kaplan, thank you so much, joining us from Airline Weekly in Fort Lauderdale.